But the most serious question here is did y'all beat McQuaid your senior year?
We kicked McQuaid's butt.
All right, Bob, you ready?
Ready.
All right, Ty, you ready?
Let's go.
All right, blow the whistle. Timeout. Tyler, who are we taking the timeout with today?
Kevin, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen of the 585 and wherever the heck I'm from down here in the South, we have Bob Duffy, the CEO of the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce. He's been the Lieutenant Governor of New York. What has Bob Duffy not done is the question. You know, Kevin and I have heard his name I heard his name for about 9 to 10 years when I was up in Rochester. Never met the guy, ladies and gentlemen. We have him on air right now. And Bob, I wanted to kick things off saying thank you for one. And for two, do you have to pay a parking ticket in Rochester by this? You know, you have the key of the city. So what happens if Bob Duffy gets a parking ticket?
I've paid a few of those in my life. Believe me, I've always paid.
That's awesome. Well, Bob, we were doing a lot of research on you, and you have your own Wikipedia page. I think Tyler and I can only dream of potentially having our own Wikipedia page, but probably a little scared as to what that would read. But you have an astounding history of kind of where you've been in your career, where you've been in your life. But out of the 4,000 pieces of information that were on there, I wanted to kind of start with just understanding on your long runs. What type of music are you listening to on those marathons?
I'm a kind of a combination of rocker, hip hop, you name it. I'm a music guy. I
love it.
I love it. College, it was Al Green, and I go right on through. Probably every rock band. Rock, soul, hip hop, R&B. Not quite into country. My wife's a big country fan, a little bit, but any kind of music is great.
I love it.
Love it, Bob. I was trying to explain to my wife about you on my way back from lunch today, Bob. And I said, have you heard the song, It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll? That's where Kevin and I are with you on our show, Bob. And we want to thank you again. You know, that's just kind of how I summarize all this stuff. We started with, you know, I can't even remember all the last 50 yes. What?
Pollock.
Bill Pollock is who we started with. And now we're at Bob Duffy about a year later. And so, Bob, you literally are one of the most interesting men in the world to Kevin and I. Who's one of the most interesting people in the world to you?
You know, I'm not a big fan person. I can't think of somebody that comes to mind right off the bat that really strikes me. I'll tell you what, in modern news right now, I think that the president of the Ukraine inspires me as a gutsy, courageous, outspoken leader that stands right with his folks, his people, on the ground, walking the talk. You know, I'll tell you this, I've never been a big fan of politics, although I spent 10 years in there. I admire people who are public servants, not politicians, people that really are there to serve. And I think that that's becoming a lost art in politics. It's more the soundbite, more hitting whatever, extremes you're trying to cater to, as opposed to serving the people that put you in office. And if I mention one, I have worked for and around and been with some tremendous people in my career, from a small child with great parents and coaches up through people in my professional life. So the point to one, but I've always learned something from everybody. And the people I admire the most are the ones that I think have impeccable integrity, that take care of their people, that are honest and decent, that will look you in the eye and tell you the truth, even though it hurts. And don't just walk the talk or talk the talk, but walk the talk. People that actually do what they say they do, I always admire it. And there's a lot of them out there. We often don't see them on the front page or the news, but they do exist. And I often say we should never lose sight of the fact that the world is made up of a majority of really good, innate people. And we have to realize that it's not what we see so much on the news. We see just the opposite. I think sometimes people get really they get polarized, they get disgruntled seeing what they see. But I try to see the good people, and there's a lot of good out there.
Yeah, I love that. And taking more of a positive tone during times of negativity is somehow people will naturally follow you. And it's probably why your positive tone that you've taken probably throughout your career to get you to where you are. I would say that most CEOs probably see themselves as politicians today in some form or another, right? However, the employees typically did not elect them to be in that position, but here they are still trying to serve the best interests of the business, but also the employees at the end of the day. And that can be a challenging position. I wanted to, since you talked about leadership, let's talk about your history first. I always find individuals' history interesting because I think we can learn, we can see ourselves in your shoes early in your career and see ourselves potentially in your shoes now where you are as a CEO there at the Chamber of Commerce. But you worked your way up throughout the police force. What did you learn in policing that helped you to become such a well-known, trusted, and individual that everybody looks up to here in Rochester?
I'll back up a little bit because my original career, I played basketball in college and high school. I wanted to play basketball and coach basketball, and I get out and teach and coach. And I worked at a playground in Rochester one summer when one of the guys I worked with was taking the police test. I had no intention of taking a police test, although I had two basketball coaches who were Rochester cops when I was growing up. I took it almost as a lark, and with this guy, and scored high enough I was actually faced with the challenge. Do I go back to school for my senior year at a school up in New Hampshire, or do I take this job in Rochester? And it's a very tough decision to make, but I decided to stay here. And from the time I started with that department, I've learned so much. And I will say, policing is not like any profession. It is not a perfect profession. But my estimation, I saw so many great people that went into that profession, people I had a chance to work alongside and learn from. And I also, kind of grew up in neighborhoods, I would say a pretty tough neighborhood, and one that always had great empathy for people on the street. And from my time in school, people that had hard times, guys I played ball with, some went on to be very successful, some ended up in jail, some are dead. And all really good guys, good people to hang out with, but just realized how lucky I was to have great parents who had a very strong compass, and had really a number of very fortunate opportunities. In my police career, what I first learned is, unlike TV, you're not pulling your gun every night. Most of your work is, you're trying to mediate disputes. There's family issues, helping people. It really is a public service job, not something like a John Wayne movie you'd see. And I don't anyway underestimate the dangers. I actually was involved in one shootout in my career as a sergeant. But one of the things that struck me was, the people that I've met with, I have a great deep respect for people. And I've often said, in the poorest neighborhoods of Rochester, I've met some of the greatest people ever in my life. And I don't ever equate someone's social stature to who they are. If I get stopped on the street by a CEO and somebody is homeless, I'll spend time with them both. And I want to respect them both. And I don't ever differentiate who they are. And I just had a great perspective. My mother was a former nun. It's another story altogether. So I grew up in a house that, believe you me, you never heard a slur. You never used bad language. You were at church every Sunday. You respected people. I still call my parents friends, if they're still alive, by their titles, not their names. But that's the way we were raised. And the police department at that time was no different. I saw some cops were on a power trip, and you see that with some, but that was a small minority. I just saw so many really good people. And one thing about the police profession is that people enter that profession so often to want to change the world. And I do think the system beats them down after a while. And I think after 3, 4, 5 years, they just, they kind of give up on that. And I think you see that in a lot of professions. And it's sad because I have a deep respect for law enforcement, the dangers they face, the services they provide. And sometimes there are bad things that happen, but in that department, I was around a lot of great people. I learned, I took tests. I never certainly aspired to be where I was. I'm very lucky. I'll stop and answer any questions, but you take civil service tests for sergeant, lieutenant, and captain. So, I was actually went through all those ranks. Everything above captain is appointed by the chief, and except for police chief, which is appointed by the mayor. And again, just very lucky. I took tests like everybody else until I got to a certain point. And after captain, again, I think the streak of being fortunate and being blessed continued to be appointed to a deputy chief in a chief's role.
Dude, awesome, Bob. You might give Paul Newman a run for his money being the coolest man on earth, Bob. But the most serious question here is did y'all beat McQuaid your senior year?
We kicked McQuaid's butt. We did. And I still see a couple of colleagues that were on that team, and we did, but we beat him at the right time, because a few years down the road, we never would have beat McQuaid. Aquinas was very tough in football, and we were pretty good at basketball. We did not win the City Catholic title, but we finished pretty strong. Back then, Cardinal Mooney in my day was the best team, and we were right behind Cardinal Mooney. But yeah, McQuaid. Actually, we beat McQuaid every time we played them. But I'll tell you, in the stands during the games with McQuaid, there was one cheer that I still laugh about. It was, "Hey, hey, what do you say? You're all going to work for us someday." You know what? As an Aquinas graduate, they're probably right, because a lot of McQuaid grads are out there, CEOs running things. But it kind of showed the good-natured competition back then. It was funny.
That is funny. I love your view when you were just talking about kind of understanding, I guess, that privilege, to put it in a context of words, is you understanding that not everybody has the same experiences, the same opportunities, and it is the difference of inches and miles sometimes, of where somebody is. So just that awareness, Bob, I love, right? And I want to kind of, I guess, does that help you understand that what's going on in the personal lives of the individuals and the employees there at the Rochester Chamber of Commerce today, but also all the member business agencies that you serve? Having that awareness and that understanding of how, I guess, maybe the entry level positions are living, how much better has that made you, or more well-rounded as to focusing on the right things as a leader within the organization today?
It's a great question. I mean, growing up, I did not grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had great parents who worked very hard. We had food on the table. Youngest of three boys. I had hand-me-down clothes. I don't think I had my own clothes for years. To actually get my own, but learned that. And then when I was in sports, I would say a good many of my friends did not look like me. I learned a lot from them. I understood their lives, their challenges a lot. We're friends. We talk, and I always felt, I was grateful for what I had. A lot of the kids that I hung out with didn't have the same things that I had. And it transferred into the police department, where you understood people and you listened. And I've always found, no matter what, a police officer, elected official, a CEO, whatever you are, if you respect the people that you deal with, whether they work with you, and nobody works for me, we work together. I refuse to say that. We work together. To me, every success of every organization are the frontline people that make that organization go. But just basic respect, understanding people, trying to help them get better and get ahead. People helped me. Our job is to help others get ahead as best we can. At the Chamber, one of the things we're focused on is elevating people's quality of life. We have a very diverse workforce, a lot of parents, a lot of single parents who are here. So we work hard to make sure we get them the highest salaries we possibly can and afford to. And we're way above minimum wage. With our latest round, I think we're right about minimum wage at about $23 an hour. And we're proud of that, because we provide healthcare, we provide other support and flexibility, because a lot of our employees, they do struggle. They struggle with gas prices, food prices, childcare, daycare, all the things that we deal with. And I think those making just an average entry salary today are in a much tougher position than ever before. And so our job is to really help them and support them in any way that we can.
I love that. And just your understanding and awareness around those life stressors that they could be experiencing in their life, and finding tangible and solutions to help either close those gaps or provide other opportunities. Awesome, Bob. Thank you.
My kids are older today. My kids are grown, but I couldn't tell you the number of times when my wife worked at Kodak, I worked, babysitter would be sick, something would happen. Kids are sick at school, we're scrambling. I remember the cost of daycare, we would shake our heads. I was a civil servant. My wife worked at Kodak as a HR professional. We were never wealthy. We struggled with mortgage payments and everything else all the time. But, when those things happen, you realize what does go. And so here, and I'll go back in the police department, you're kind of in a rigid environment where, it's all policies. I have the flexibility here to offer that flexibility to people that we work with. When someone has a serious surgery, we don't put them on paid family leave. We take care of them here. To me, when they work hard for us, they have a crisis. Loyalty is a two-way street. So we support them all the way. If they have a tough time with daycare or childcare, we can work remotely, or you can bring your kids to work. We're pet friendly. We're kid friendly. We just try and ease some of the stressors that people have, because they have many nowadays. And we have very, very low turnover here, I would say. And I have an outstanding team of professionals in the chamber. Very proud of them. And people ask me, why are you there? Why do you work there? I don't do anything I don't want to do. And if I wanted to be somewhere else, I'd be somewhere else. I really enjoyed this experience as much as any of my careers. I just think the people I get a chance to work with, the kind of services we can provide to help others has been just a great experience for me. So, it's really trying to also pay forward the help that I had in my career, the way people have really helped me, supported me, mentored me. I think I owe other people the same things that people gave me. So I think it's a responsibility that we all have at almost every stage of our careers and lives.
I love that.
Dude, awesome, Bob. And I could totally see you walking the sidelines, Bob, and the hoops, man. And I would love to see you recruiting tactics, to be honest, Bob. That's where I see you coming in a strong arm, man. How'd you get all these 5 stars? Bob Duffy's on my squad, guys. That's how we got these 5 stars. You heard the guy talk?
What I was proud of when I was chief, I would ride in cars with police officers. I'd be involved in foot chases, running through backyards at 2 o'clock in the morning. I could run a little faster back then. I made a number of arrests as chief. I actually made one arrest as mayor, or helped make a robbery arrest over on the southeast part of our city. And I would say afterwards, I didn't put cuffs on anybody in a long time. It felt kind of good when I did that. A guy had held up a store over in the southeast part of the city, and a police officer was chasing him at gunpoint and had him and I just came up, helped him, and got back in my car and left. But I've been an action junkie my whole life, and I just don't think I could ever drive by something that was happening without jumping out and trying to help it. I'm a little bit older now and not quite in the same shape I was 20 or 30 years ago, but I still don't lack at least the ability to jump out and help in some way.
Golly, that's awesome, Bob. And how does one become a mayor? Can you kind of walk us through that, Bob? Like, how does that happen?
You guys will love this story. I was a police chief for many years, and the person who I thought would be the next mayor coming in actually was a very good friend of mine. I had no concerns about leaving, but I'd run a couple of marathons. The first New York Marathon I ran was in 2004. And I'd come back on a late Sunday night, and I can remember this vividly because we were invited to a friend's house the following Wednesday. So it was mid-November 2004. And so my wife and I went to a dinner, kind of an odd time for dinner in the middle of the week, but they were friends of ours, and we went in, and there were several officials that a DA and some attorneys, public officials that we knew that we socialized with. So we sat down at the table, and halfway through dinner, the host said, "Now we'll get to why we brought you here." And one by one, they all went around the table and said, "We want you to run for mayor," because the current mayor who I worked for, who I loved, was retiring. There was going to be no incumbent. When they got done, I was in shock. I did tell them my first inclination is to say no. Out of respect, I'll give it a couple days. But I just would say, I don't think this is going to happen. Well, walking in my car that night, my wife and I left. She had a little different take on it. She said 3 words. The first one was no. The third one was way. And the middle was like a hard consonant word we all know, right in the middle. And that was her response that night. And so you could tell that my wife never was a political social climber that wanted her husband to run for anything. Make a long story short, I went back. I did talk to my mayor the next day out of loyalty. I told him I was called to a dinner, asked this, and he said, I told him I was going to say no. He said, Bob, I wouldn't say no. Give it some thought, think about it. Don't say no. Give it some time, which kind of surprised me. So that started a process. It took me a few months to decide to do this. The same friends ran a poll and actually publicized the results of the poll, which were very favorable, which put a large target on my back at that time. When I decided to run for mayor, which I did, in March of 2005, I retired as police chief, and I started my campaign on April 1st. And I just made a point. I love the city. I wanted to contribute this way. I made a decision to do this. And from April 1st to the primary, I walked every day. My opponents were at, I think, meetings and legislative meetings and political committee meetings. I was out walking the streets with the people. I was every corner of this city, Park Avenue, Jefferson Avenue, Main Street, Parcells Avenue, you name it. I walked, I knocked on doors, I sat in kitchens, I sat in front steps, I went to bodegas, barbershops. I talked, I listened to people, I asked questions. And I did that for months. And I really had relationships already my whole life here, but I went out and just spent those months, 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night, probably 7 days a week, and just listening to people and understanding and again, every corner. And my big things were public safety, education, economic development, and jobs. Those 3 things. And I would say in any campaign, anywhere, in most communities, those 3 things are still a priority. And to this day in Rochester, I would say that safety is a priority. Education is a priority. and certainly economic development and economic vitality, although it's getting a whole lot better. But that was my platform. I'll fast forward, primary night. Worked hard all these months. Primary night, I'm at a friend's house. We're watching the returns come in. And I'm a realist. I worked hard, and I'm one that, hey, if you win, you win. You lose, you lose. You want to win. You're competitive. So I'm watching the returns come in. I'm down like 52, 29%, 55, 28%. The first, and it could be only a couple hundred votes, but it's the first groups coming in around the city. And so my wife came with the kids, and I'm like, you might now want to be in here, right? So you take the kids downstairs. You don't want to see this. And I just, I don't get stressed out. I was resolved that it wasn't going to happen. 15 minutes later, I get a call from a former assemblywoman who unfortunately has since passed away. And she said, are you sitting down? I said, yep. She says, how do you feel? I said, not great, but I'm resolved. Well, she goes, Bob, you won. I'm like, what? You won. I said, no, I'm looking at the TV. No, I'm down at election headquarters. I'm watching it. Watch that TV change. Within 5 minutes, everything changed. And it was surreal. It just was. And that night, the election, the people I had a chance to bring on my team, I went out and I recruited some of the best talent I could find. I didn't care what party they were from. I didn't care if they supported me in my campaign or not. I was not a career politician. I got some great people on that team. I call it an all-star team. And it was a phenomenal experience. I love being mayor. I'm a big fan of Malik Evans, our current mayor. I've known Malik for a long time. And I know what he's going through right now, but there's no job like it. I love police chief, but mayor, you have the whole city, and it's a fabulous on the ground job. And I loved it. That's kind of story how I got there. Very lucky, very fortunate. But I also go back to, I think I had an advantage of being on the ground in my life in public service, not being behind closed doors, being accessible, as my wife would say, being accessible beyond any expectation. I couldn't go to Wegmans. I would go to Wegmans for a loaf of bread. 3 hours later, I'd be home because I'd be stopped at every aisle. I would carry 3x5 cards in my pocket. I would write down problems, but I would get out. When I got to the parking lot, I would call different commissioners and say, here's a problem, because I want to make sure. I never want to be accused of not following through.
Mhm.
But that's a mayor's job. That's what a mayor does. And I loved it until, I was asked to run for lieutenant governor, which I will tell you when the former governor Cuomo reached out. He was the attorney general. True story. I said no for the first 20 minutes. I did, with all due respect, I did not want to leave my city. I did not want to leave this team. For the next 45 minutes, there was a lot of pressure applied. And the big thing was, first of all, you could do more for your city coming to Albany, which I think there's some degree of truth to that. And second of all, I'm thinking, if I say no and back out, here I am, the mayor of the third largest city of New York, with a bad relationship with the governor, because he was going to win the race no matter what. But I decided to go with him for that job. And while it was not a glorious job, I like running things. Being lieutenant governor, you have no statutory authority. You're given what the governor gives you to do. And the former governor was actually very good to me and giving me economic development and issues that I really love doing. But after 4 years, I did not want to run a second term. And a lot of pressure was applied to run a second term. But I told them after the first year I was not going to come back. I would finish my term, but I want to come back home. And this is my home. This year I'm married, heading into my 37th year of marriage to a saint. I have 2 great kids. I have 2 great grandkids. And, life is short. And I have a lot of friends who have died young. Some have died recently. That, you're not promised tomorrow. And I want to make sure I don't shortchange my family, which, quite frankly, through my public life, probably have been shortchanged quite a bit. But my wife has rarely, if ever, complained. She's just been a stalwart.
Wow. Lots to unpack there, and really exciting. Times. I appreciate you sharing the story of taking us through how you became mayor and kind of election night and just that overall experience, because most people kind of see politics today, right? Politics, like you said, they see it more as politicians instead of public service. Like I think it was originally our founding fathers would have, and they were supposed to be the lawyers, the farmers, and everybody else that are working out in the public and just representing all of us. And something that you said, and I think that it is a dying art, is listening, and having the awareness to ask a question and not think about the next question out of your mouth, but actually listening to the answer or the response that you're getting back. I too have to write things down. So those 3x5 cards, I would have to write those things down myself, but the action, and I know it's something Tyler talks about. If you say you're going to do something, do it, and just show up, because that's half the battle. I wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit and get into more specific, the leadership side of things. We're hearing a lot about the challenges in the world of work today, right? A lot of emotional intelligence and things that it seems to come very naturally to you, Bob, is the conversation. How do you build that trust or that internal trust necessary to get the honesty back from your own employees, but also your own team members and teammates? As you surround yourself with that A team, how do you make them comfortable with coming to you and telling you what you need to hear rather than what you may want to hear?
That's a great question. Easier said than done, no matter what you do. I think people always have that fear of upsetting somebody. And I'm the kind of guy, if you say I have good news and bad news, I will say, give me the bad news first. Good news is nice. Let me deal with the bad news. I want to know that. This organization, when I came here, it's not very big, 40 people. I sense there's a lot of distrust, very different relationships on the floor. One of the employees on my first or second day came to me to tell me how bad my predecessor was, who happened to be a friend of mine, to say the least. But right off the bat, I'm thinking anyone that comes in on your first week complaining about the previous boss kind of loses it with me. I just, to me, I'm an old-fashioned loyalty person. That yes, we work with people. Sometimes they drive us crazy. Sometimes we don't agree. But I happen to think the person that was there before me was a very good person. So I went through and I did a lot of listening. There was a lot of fear on this floor. And, over the few years we had, through addition and subtraction, some people have left, brought some people on. And I would say it's about culture. It's about building trust slowly. I cannot lie to people. I have to either no comment, avoid it, or just tell you what I think. It's no other way around it. You have to treat people as if they are as important as they really are, and the frontline people here are. They are important. You cannot punish somebody for disagreeing. I love debate. I mean, I like people to disagree, because somewhere along the line, I don't think I'm right all the time. I may have a way of doing things, but if somebody says, hey, why don't we do it this way? If I think it's better, I'm like, hey, let's do it. But trying to build that, you take care of people through, I think, pay and benefits and support. You support them, you help them. The most important thing is I've been in very directed leadership roles before. The police department, when you are leading people that carry guns, you can't be laissez-faire and kind of be hands-off. It's a lot of responsibility with that. And I serve with great people, but you're pretty much on point. Sometimes directing things, especially if there's a crisis, and I have no trouble. If there's a crisis, believe me, I go into a different mode, and my mind clears up, and I just can see, to me, make decisions without any question. My biggest concern when I work with people, for those who could not make a decision, make whether it's a good one or bad, make a decision. Don't sit there and punt the ball every time. And I never had trouble doing that. But here, it just was about getting people in. And I think the one thing I want to reinforce, talent matters. If you're a Buffalo Bills coach, talent matters. Josh Allen, Mr. Diggs, to me, that team goes up with talent, but character matters as well. So getting a blend of talent and character, and I'm a firm believer in ethics and honesty. Our employees here created, really from the ground up, our values statement. I did not want a poster for the wall that a few managers put together. But over time, I think we've evolved. I think our culture has grown dramatically. It's a great place to work. It's a fun place to work. We do a lot, but I think the most important thing for a boss is, and I don't care whether you're young or on your later part of your career, give your people credit. Let your people be out front and get credit. The worst thing is to work on a project like we've all done, give it to somebody, and your boss is up there, take credit to the board or whoever else. That's what I never say what I did. And I always make it a point to trumpet what our people do by name and give them credit, because that's what they do. And you want to give people chances to create relationships, to grow their careers. Just lost a very good teammate here, Adrian Hale, who I've known for years. Adrian was an intern. Adrian and I grew up in the same part of the city. He was on one side of the river off Avenue D. I was off Driving Park on the other side. He was an intern here. Here's a man who, a man of color, went to city schools, 2 combat tours in Afghanistan with the U.S. Marine Corps, came back, went to Monroe Community College. He interned here. That's where I met him. Interned here for a couple of years, went to Yale, graduated, came back and worked. Just a great leader, man of integrity. Be an opportunity for a job this past year. And I hate to lose him, but he went to a company, and the CEO actually called me. They doubled his salary. And I don't think he really was that hot on it at first, but I said, you have to take this. You're going to grow your family's generational wealth. You have to take it. I can't pay you that amount. I'd like to, but I can't. Take it. And listen, if it doesn't work out, you have a home here. I'll find a spot for you in a minute. Come back. So, I don't think he's going to come home for a while because he's doing pretty well where he is. But, I think the bottom line is you treat people that way. Now, there are others who've come to me who have left. I've thanked them for their service. I'm not inviting them to come back because they weren't a fit for the culture. A leader has to shape a culture and not just lead it, but shape it. And I do think the Buffalo Bills, which I love, I'm a diehard Bills fan. When you hear them talk, it's the process, it's the culture, it's character. They pick people, not just an athletic talent, but people that will fit in, people that are going to be good teammates, people that are going to be trustworthy and be there for their team on Sunday. Well, I feel the same way in an organization. You want people who are going to work hard, be there for their team, not be on their own, not be out there doing self-promotion, but promoting the team. But my job is to promote them, to help them get out there. And so I think that's probably one of the best ways to build an organization. And then with COVID, there's a lot of challenges right now with COVID. And for those that say everybody is going to come back to work next Monday, 8 to 5, I'm sorry, folks, that's not going to work because you have to know your team. You have to know who they are. And hey, I'm obviously older than my teammates. I had one that just left a little while ago. He was my soulmate because he wasn't too much younger than I was. But today's generation, you have to understand them and work with them. They're terrific. They're super talented. They're high energy, but they want other things out of life. And so flexibility matters. And we provide that here. We provide flexibility. We are totally remote. We have a situation now. Some are in the office every day. I'm in the office now. Many of us are committed, but a lot of us are not. But the job is getting done. The mission is being accomplished, and things are working out. And so trying to meet people where they are and trying to make sure that, you make the mission should be accomplished, but I think you accomplish it through your people. And if you understand what they need and what they want and try and work with them, I think you have a lot of success. And I think that's what we're trying. We're not perfect by any stretch, but that is what we're trying to accomplish here. Dude,
Bob, just keep killing it, man. Yes. I love how you just keep mentioning that you're an action junkie. You're keeping your commitments, and that's kind of what I tell Kevin that I try to do. And people think that's kind of easy, and I'm like, have you tried to keep your commitments like all day for one whole day? And it's pretty tough, but I just love hearing a man of your stature going through the same kind of process as, me and a few like-minded folks out there, Bob. It makes me feel better about myself, to be honest. When did your parents convey to you on how to treat people, right? Like, it seems to me that you've treated people right and listened to people right your whole life. You didn't just start one day networking, To me, it was like Bob Duffy was just this little kid and he's growing up in his teenage years. But even in that era, I have a feeling you were doing it the right way. How did you know?
Well, I was never perfect by a stretch, but you know what? My parents, God bless them, my mother was orphaned at the age of 11. Irish immigrants. Her parents came over here. She actually went into a convent, became a nun, Sister of St. Joseph, was there, I think, for 13 years, wanted to get out. A nun she worked with, actually, she got out. She had to petition the Pope at that time, as I learned later, because she never told us this when she was alive. She got out, and a nun who she worked with was a sister of my father, who was a World War II veteran in the Navy. He was coming out of World War II, coming back to Rochester. My aunt, the nun, played matchmaker. They got married a year or so later. And I will tell you, in my house, you never heard an ethnic slur of anything. I don't care what. I mean, our neighborhood was a mix. But, if you go back in the era of ethnic jokes, if you ever had an ethnic joke in my house, you tasted dog soap. You never did that. I mean, to this day, my kids, God bless them, if they heard an ethnic slur, they recoil at that. Because I'm proud to say we raised our kids the same way I was raised. You raise them to respect people. You don't make fun of people. I don't care what situation they're in. No one is better than anybody else. And that's the way my parents were. They were simple. We were never, as I said before, never wealthy. Believe me, we had a one-car family. We weren't in poverty. We were not in the upper crust, the middle class by any stretch. My parents could never afford to move out of a small house on Duff Street out Driving Park in the 10th Ward. But I tell you what, we were rich with our family life. I had two older brothers. My oldest brother's been an attorney for probably 40 some years. My middle brother has a glass business in California. We have different levels of success, what we've done. But I'll tell you what, I'm proud of both my brothers, deeply honest on this. And, I have to say this, I am far from perfect. I can't lie. In public life, I'm unelectable today in New York State because if I'm running for office, I'm going to tell you what I think. And quite frankly, a lot of things that I see today offend me in terms of people aren't being served. But I think when people just say things and don't mean it, it bothers me. And my family was that way. And it was about, and we grew up the same way with our kids. Skin color was like hair color and eye color. We're different. We look different, but we're the same. And that's the way my parents raised us. That's the way we raised our kids. And I would only hope every family would raise their kids the same way. And when I saw it happen, that massacre in Buffalo, which to this day, I just cannot register with that. I've been around enough death in my life. I've seen death. I've been to murder scenes, comforted families that lost loved ones. To see people shopping on a Saturday afternoon, grandmothers shopping in a neighborhood, being gunned down. To me, what kind of hate could ever perpetuate that? And what kind of parents and family and friends could not identify that and stop it at some point? To me, there's too many questions answered that have not been answered on that one that just bother me. And I just look at the way we were raised, and we have responsibilities. And I think that's every parent should do that. This society has become so divided when we are so similar in so many ways. We have different experiences, obviously. Our ancestors had different experiences, but we have so much there to pull together and help. And I think we have people often in public office and others driving us farther apart when they should be bringing us together. And I think it's one of the biggest challenges we have today, because that 18-year-old kid, how he got radicalized, how that it was allowed to happen, and how you can have mental health episodes, all these other things, and still go out and buy a gun. And I always say, before we create new laws, enforce the laws you already have and make sure you enforce them. Don't look the other way, because there are a lot of laws that we just don't enforce. And I think you're seeing today, just in society, a lack of respect for law enforcement and rules, demoralizing police. And again, I think the police profession has been demoralized, much like the Vietnam veterans returning from war way back when were demoralized coming back to this country. They were spat upon, cursed on, disrespected. And I think the country learned after a couple of decades that was wrong. And I think our country will learn now that what they're doing today to public safety, fix the problems, fix the culture of that profession, but don't throw it out and discard it because we need it.
Yeah. And it's not all bad, and it's not all broken, to your point. And I love kind of just again your view on people, and that everybody is equal, and that's really hard for some CEOs. Sometimes it's last week we had John Love on, and he put it as, I survived my success, because sometimes when we find ourselves in a position of power, we tend to forget how we got there or why we got there, and we turned and say, oh, it was me, right? And I am special, and I'm the reason. But I haven't heard you really talk about yourself once, Bob, in that regard. And that's really what we're starting to see today, is that emotional intelligence really is just being more aware of your ego, that it is there. Everybody has an ego, of course, but how do we ensure that we keep that ego in check? And how do we make sure that we're all in tune with what everybody is seeing? Because I think you garnered different perspectives to the same challenges or the same problems, but you get to see it from different angles or different viewpoints. And everything that you've shared with us today, you can tell that that is really an important part of your development as a leader today. I wanted to kind of go back to, you talked about kind of being a product of our history, right? And where we are today, and this evolution of work. And where are you seeing, I guess, the future of work headed? Obviously, the demands are changing. You're probably seeing that as far as the supply and demand, especially more specifically here in Rochester, Where do you see as the future of work, and where are we headed as a community, and should we be excited here as Rochester? Because I think we're seeing some good things, but we also have some negative things that still need to be addressed, to your point.
I think a lot of great things are going on. We are blessed with a lot of wonderful companies, growing technology. We're an innovation hub in Rochester. We're also a best kept secret because people don't realize what's here until they get here. And a former CEO of Kodak, Dan Karp, once told me, I believe I was mayor, he said, Bob, when we recruited executive talent for Kodak, Rochester was the hardest place to get executives to come to and hardest place to get them to leave once they were here. And that defines us because, we're like, remember the old Hertz Avis commercials? Avis had to try harder. Well, we had to try harder. But I think once you're here, and there's a special warmth. I think Buffalo is the same way, and Syracuse. I'm an upstate guy. These smaller, mid-sized cities, there's a sense of home and collegiality in many ways. I mean, I still can walk any street in this city and not feel unsafe and probably know people. But in many ways, the work part is changing. It is. I think we have to meet our workers where they are. I think people demand more flexibility. They want to enjoy life. They don't want to be behind a desk for 12 or 16 hours. And we've all pulled, I pulled more than 24-hour shifts in my career. I still, to this day, wake up every day at 3 o'clock in the morning because in my life, I go to bed at 11. I would never even have a beer at home at night because I knew I'd be called out in the middle of the night, and usually I was. And so I never wanted to ever even be impaired anyway. So I'd go to bed, probably have coffee, wake up, out the door, see my wife hours later, and even to this day, 3 o'clock, 3:15, I'm wide awake. And I think Mark and my teammates will understand. I send emails a lot at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I'll wake up and I can't go back to sleep. I'm on the iPad or something. Oh, I forgot about this. And I even say, don't ever feel a need to answer my email at 3 o'clock in the morning. I have nothing to do, so I'm doing it. But I think that a CEO or leadership, and like a general or a leader in the Army, I'm not a veteran, or a police chief, you have to know your people, you have to know their capabilities, and you have to work with them. And I think everything is changing today. I would say boot camp is probably changing in the armed forces much more than it was 30 or 40 years ago. Training camp for football and for college sports. And I think for us, we adapt. We want to achieve our mission, but you achieve your mission through people. You don't force them. You don't coerce them. You don't scream and yell. I don't think, I can't think of a time other than being at a police scene or something, and some crisis. I'm not a yeller. I'm not a screamer. I don't curse. If I do, it's occasional, and I'm mad when I do that, but it's very rare. But I just think that it's understanding your people and working with them. And, motivation is getting people to see their role and supporting them. I don't like telling people what to do. I like to say, here's what we have to do. You get there. Mm-hmm. And you find a way. If somebody says, hey, Bob, I want you to do this, but do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm like, I'm checking out already. If you say, Bob, get this done, I'll do it. And I'll check back with you. But I think that, you have to trust your people. You have to, you hire talent, you hire smart people. And I find this generation now, they are super smart technically, hard workers, bright, they're creative. I love them. I love being around them. I think they energize us. But you know what? It's so true. If you have a project due the next morning, and we don't have, I'm just giving an example. Say I had a project the next morning and you have to have it done. Well, maybe my teammates, I bring Mark or Shannon in, they say, well, I can do it, but I have tickets to a concert tonight, 8 o'clock. Now, if I say, nope, can't go to the concert, got to stay here, got to finish that project, I think they may finish it, but they'll hate it. But if I say, hey, go to the concert, just if you can get done by tomorrow morning, I'll tell you what, they'll be back at 3 o'clock in the morning working on this to get done. That's just give people rope and a lead and let them really develop their own path forward. I think that's what you do. And I'm not saying I've always done this. I think I've learned a lot over the years, but you can't attract talent and keep it unless you do that. Maybe you'll attract it, but you'll lose it very quickly. And there is organizations I see locally and otherwise, when their entire top staff leaves, it's not because they all have opportunities coming up at the same time. There's something there that maybe that they don't like the way it's run. And I think more often than not, it may be leadership that is focused on them and not their people. Leadership that is taking credit for what's being done versus giving it to their people. And we see that a lot locally. We see it, around the country. And I think leaders have to evolve. And to me, it's not about just a book. I've read a lot of leadership books. One of my concentrations at RIT was business. I had some great business professors there. But I've learned from people. I've sat with, I'm a lifelong learner, and I believe you can learn from a bad boss just as much as a great boss. And I've been around both in my career, and you learn from that. And you learn from listening to your people and have them talk to you. When you can listen to them and they tell you what they think and why they left and why they're not happy. But I think that's part of leadership. And this organization, we had a lot of rumors, cattiness at one point. I hate rumors. Don't talk behind someone's back. If you got something to say it to them. Don't tell me. I don't want to hear it. Go tell them. And I think we stop those things. And that's how you build trust. If I were, say, me and Tyler are talking about Kevin, and maybe we all work, and maybe, Kevin is on our team, and I say something to Tyler about Kevin, but I don't say it to Kevin. And when Kevin confronts me, and Kevin's going to say, why didn't you come to me first? And Kevin is never going to trust me again because I did have the guts to look him in the eye and say something. And I think that's, to me, it's management and leadership theory to some degree, but it's common sense, and it's to me, it's humanity and respect. And I go back to that issue of respect. I'm still a nut for that. And the things you hear it today on Twitter. First of all, I'm a little older in my life here, but I will tell you what, there are very few people on Twitter that would have the guts to come in and look me in the eye and say some things that they say. I'd welcome that. Oh, yeah. And I don't ever say something that people, to me, I don't insult people. I don't denigrate people. I'm actually, if I follow my Twitter feed, I'm usually pretty positive. But it's this anonymous courage that people have that they'll use that as a platform to say things that they would never say. And I go back to the law of the streets. Would you go up to the bully on the corner and say it to him? Or would you tweet it out? I think that if you can't say something to somebody, but you want to put it on Twitter or Facebook, then don't say it. If you could say it to their face and feel good about it, then say it. And I find that there's enough, dirt in the world, enough negativity, to me, positive. And it's not phony. I just believe, hey, listen, I'm going to die at some point. And I told my wife, I said, when I go, I'm going to say one thing. That's, I've had a good run. I mean, I really feel good about things. And you know what? You do what you can every day. But to me, it's family, it's work, it's community. And I think right now, even in our work, there are things I could do. I've been to more meetings, events than you could ever count in my career. But I would rather have our team go to those and have them develop relationships that are going to benefit them down the road. I really stay, I do some media stuff, but I also don't look for the media. I'm not a photo op person. We have a lot of events. I try and go off to the side because I also think people get tired of seeing you after a while, number one. And number two, give somebody else a chance. And I try and judge. If they want to talk to me, I'll talk. But I also think I have some very interesting people on my team you might want to talk to because they also have, great careers ahead of them, a great success. And I think those are people you might want to know.
Yeah. Wow.
Awesome. Well, Bob, I keep hearing that good players make good coaches. Is kind of your motto over there. And I have to ask, what college basketball team would you coach and who would you coach with? Who's your right-hand man over there? And what team is this in collegiate basketball?
Listen, I'm a Cuse man, so I'm an Orange guy. I played junior college in Division III. I never played. I was a garbage man. Not a bad jump shot. I was a scrappy, skinny kid. I could jump. I could certainly battle under the boards. Always had sharp elbows. This nose didn't come. I wasn't born with this nose. I think it's been broken at least twice. But I love the game. But then I played a college called Biscayne College when I was up in New Hampshire, and played against a guy named Arthur Collins. And Arthur Collins was I think a Division III All-American at that time. Well, I played Arthur Collins. I actually had, I think, like 26 points, 14 rebounds, whatever, feeling good. Arthur Collins, who I guarded, had like 58 points in about 20. So it shows you, and I knew back then, I gave him a big hug. I'm like, man, you are the best. And I just knew, and he was drafted by the Boston Celtics. He didn't last long, but I could play, but I was not at that level. But I learned so much from basketball and sports. I think you learn about people and teammates and teamwork. But I love Cuse basketball. I never met Boeheim, and I understand he's not the warmest personality, but coaches, college coaches, I would say Mike Krzyzewski, I always had enormous respect for. I thought, but he's won. John Wooden, I have a plaque. I actually have personally signed a plaque in my office from John Wooden that a friend of mine got many, many years ago when he was alive. An iconic coach. Always loved him. John Thompson, a former Georgetown coach.
Oh, yeah.
These were like superstars. I'd love to even be on a staff of one of those coaches and just listen and learn because I love the game. I still do. I love March Madness. The NBA, I wait till the playoffs come. I don't watch regular season. But the college March Madness, I love. I just do.
Yeah. I live for
but
that.
we had Swen Nader.
Yeah. I was just going to say the same exact thing. We had Swen Nader on. I don't know if that name rings.
Oh, yeah. UCLA. Yeah.
So he was, I forget what guest that he was, but he was on the show before, and just hearing the stories of Wooden and the leadership, and to Tyler's point, is Wooden wasn't doing, he was doing things certainly differently, but Swen would tell you that it's harder once you get to the end to start incrementally getting better. And that's what John Wooden did, was we can make all these gains, but then those smaller pieces that really add up to those national championships. But
I think I remember, actually Wooden is iconic for what he did, and his character was impeccable. And I think that, character counts, and obviously the championships he won. I could have played for Bobby Knight because I could take verbal abuse. I can, but he was tough. I like tough coaches. So, I would never complain about getting whacked in the head or yelled at. I did. I grew up that way. But
that chair flies right across your face. Yeah.
But he was kind of a madman, but he pushed people. And I'm not saying he was a great character, but coaches, depends who they are. I think you really are around good people. Coaches I had in high school and college, I always revered. They cared about the kids. And I think coaches have such an impact on young people today, from little league up to college. And I think that's to me a great profession. But I think those skills go into the workplace as well. And I think those translate very well in the business.
So cool, Bob. And as we're wrapping up, I just want to say appreciate all your comments about the tragedy up in Buffalo on Saturday. I know a lot of people are probably trying to wrap their heads around that too, is how an 18-year-old could have so much hate, and how he could possibly drive for over 3.5 hours and that conscience never kick in. But it's something that you said earlier, is I think us as white males that typically tend to be behind the guns in these mass shootings and some of these other top suicide rates and things like that, is really understanding our privilege. And I think you shared that earlier, is the understanding and aware that we are given certain or differences within society, within business, within our lives, and also being aware of that, becoming more aware of that, and helping others lift them up. Is something that it sounds like you're all about, and why you're not a politician, but a doer. So I just want to say thank you so much for all the work that you're doing here in Rochester to make this a better community, because I know you're passionate about it. I'm not from here originally, but as Tyler said, I've heard your name time and time and time again. And this was an honor to sit down with you, to learn from you, to really hear what the method behind the myth, if you will. But we're really lucky to have leaders like yourself in our community. And I just wanted to say I appreciate all your commentary today, but also all the things that I know that you're doing for our community as well.
I appreciate it very much. I appreciate the questions and the frivolity here. One thing about privilege, I would say briefly, people have to see this. It's not about giving somebody something they don't deserve, but think of it as a race. And, we've run races. I've run marathons and 10Ks. If some of us are at one point, and sometimes the elite runners start first, and the other runners start way in the back. I've always been way in the back, always as far. That's kind of like how life is sometimes too, because some people have all the abilities, but maybe just based on who they are, how they grew up, they kind of start behind, and they need more time to catch up. I think if we realize that, and elected officials who create more divisions and more divides are wrong. We need to bring people together. Listen, we should not be divided by race, ethnicity, religion, nothing. We're people, I think, interesting. I was thinking in the car today, go back to 9/11 and how this country came together as Americans back then, 21 years ago, everybody came together. No one cared what they looked like. Well, today, all of a sudden that changed. And what happened during that time frame? And I think a lot of it is politics, bad politics. people that divide to get a vote, people that divide to get some, to me, they don't belong in office. I mean, we need people that will unite and unify. And this whole thing about elected officials, one side can't work with the other. I tell people, listen, the far right and far left, I really can't stand.
Yeah.
Most people are in the middle.
Yeah.
And the majority of this country is somewhere in the middle, not agreeing on everything, but you know what? We could find some common ground. That's where this country has to go. We'll be far better off. And I think what happened, Sunday, I know people from Buffalo, obviously I've had connections there. I don't live there, but I still go back to somebody who would walk in a store, any venue, and take a human life, an innocent life, because of what they look like. And that's really what that was. And to me, there's nothing more repugnant than that. And I'm not a death penalty guy, but that person shouldn't see the light of day ever outside of a prison. And New York State should take a look at itself. They are turning killers loose, after 30, 40 years. You know what? When you take a human life, I'm sorry, unless it's a crime of passion where they lost their head, but to put a gun to someone's head and execute them summarily, you don't deserve to ever walk outside again. And for the parole boards and the governors who commute sentences, I would say sit with that victim's family first. Ask them. If the victim's family says, we're okay with it, I wouldn't complain.
Yeah.
I would say 99% of the time, not, because their lives were changed forever. And today, everything, what's bad is good, what's good is bad. And I just think we have to get back to more balance and elected officials who will tell you the truth, not just go with talking points or what will get them, to an election.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
my last talk of the day,
I
but
love it.
just the way I feel.
Same could be said about the CEOs, right? Oh, the same thing, the parallels that you're seeing. I think politicians are so out of touch with who they're actually there to serve, and I think CEOs are also out of touch with what their responsibilities and roles are.
No doubt.
But, Bob, this was an awesome interview. I just want to say thank you again so much for your time. We know how valuable it is, and you did an incredible job. Thanks so much.
Listen, you guys are a ball to be with anytime. A lot of laughs. Listen, I hope it cools off.